Hi. Thanks, Stephen Elliott. Thanks, Isaac, asshole. So, after the election last week, I was thinking about stuff, so I wrote this down. It's sort of related to the election. It's about something that happened a few years ago. A few years back, I was cooking dinner when I noticed a moth fluttering around just to the right of the stove. It followed me over to the sink and then to the dinner table, and finally I realized there was no moth, just a strange flickering in my right eye. My doctor was baffled, and then a specialist was baffled, and finally I was informed that brain tumor was a possibility. Like anyone who's ever had a glancing brush with mortality, I started wondering whether I was doing all I could with my limited time. I remember that week bumping into an acquaintance at my local cafe in Bernal Heights here. As we chatted, I kept wondering, why don't we climb up on these tables and talk in Tom Brokaw accents? Or why don't we talk like really close to each other and then spread jelly on each other's noses when we're done? Will I really die only having conducted normal conversations in cafes? It suddenly felt urgent to live life as freely as possible, whatever that meant. To run down every possibility simply because it's there. If you're thinking this sounds like the bucket list, well, actually maybe it does, I haven't seen it. But I had a bigger problem. The more I started blathering about living freely, the more I sounded like our moronic administration at the time, which used the idea of freedom to justify war and a bunch of other stupid policies, of course. The matter of freeness, in other words, had been hijacked by freedom, capital F freedom, that insipid, overused buzzword trotted out by empty-headed people selling ideologies and Mach 3 razors and cell phone plans and stupid new life coaching systems. Freedom, 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 freedom. But what did they mean, I always wondered. I mean, these administration people, Bush people, who really owned that word for a while, what were they even talking about when they talked about loving freedom? Now that I had my own interest in the subject, I wanted to know. How should a person go about embracing that kind of freedom that's at the heart of so many of their policies? So I asked them. With this fluttering in my right eye, I wrote letters to as many figures in the administration as I could find. How can I be free, I asked, and please be specific. 5 days later, to my surprise, a letter from John Ashcroft appeared in my mailbox. And he was specific. Dear Chris, wear a spandex bodysuit. Nothing to lose, and it might be weird in a neat sort of way. Also, it's okay if you like that Miley Cyrus song about the party. Play it as loud as you want, and not ironically. It's catchy. And lastly, let's say, hypothetically, you have a gummy smile. Don't keep your mouth shut in photos. Just go for it. Big smile. Somehow Ashcroft seemed as surprised as I was by this document he'd produced. And then so did Condi in her letter the next day. Slide over the hood of your car sometimes, she advised, like cops do on TV. I know you think it might not be slippery enough, and your pants will sort of catch and you'll just sort of fall on the ground. But that's okay. Because compare that to never doing it, and being on an oxygen tank one day, and the shame of realizing that you always walked around your car every single time all these years. These little bits of advice on embracing freedom kept coming. Do you ever paint paintings? Janie wanted to know. If you're ever painting a painting of, say, Chart at sunrise, he wrote, maybe include a tiny parrot chewing angrily on an old rubber band in the corner where nobody will notice it. Because why not? It's your painting. You can do whatever you want. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, did these people really write these letters to me? Well, no, not technically. But every now and then, the facts and the truth are at odds in the world, and a person has to invent the facts in order to tell the truth that would otherwise go unspoken. Politically, these people could never say this stuff out loud, but as a journalist using the tools of conjecture and common sense, I could do it for them. Well, that's how I explained it to Bush in a few letters into our correspondence. His reply was a nude photo of himself he'd taken inside the butterfly exhibit at the National Zoo. If you can get them to give you a private viewing, he said, go for it. These little fellows are just so sweet and gentle and lightweight. You yourself start to feel lightweight too. It's lovely. Mixed in with the advice were accounts of these people themselves finding freeness. Under his bed, Rumsfeld kept his father's old guitar. And late at night, when all the lights were off, he strummed the chorus of Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. He had no time to learn the verse or the bridge, especially after the Iraq invasion ramped up. But he was happy just singing the I went to the doctor, went to the mountain part over and over again. Sort of a heartfelt whisper until sleep washed over him. I waited for the day when these letters would inevitably stop coming. But strangely, the Daily Pile only grew. Condi and all those people told their friends, and they told their friends, and soon anyone who had ever harbored a quiet thought about living a broader existence was pouring out their heart to me. By the time the doctors here in San Francisco told me that my eye thing was benign, hundreds of people all over the country were writing each week about a kind of freedom that rarely gets talked about in America, even as this other kind gets talked about all the damn time. Eventually I stopped reading these letters. But the other day, after the midterm election, I found myself thinking about this freedom thing all over again. The Tea Party and all these cretins talking about getting freedom from Obamacare and all that. It's tempting to tune out all the hot air that's going to be coming our way. But that never seems to work. And anyway, I can't help but think that our best bet might be to fish out some kind of humanity from these people. Just sort of run the broom under the cabin, see what comes out. Because look at them. These poor, dumb assholes. It's poignant in a way. In place of that absurd, soaring rhetoric that we hear, you can imagine actual human longings. Maybe John Boehner secretly fantasizes about growing that tidy little haircut out, feeling it fan out in the breeze in the ways Daddy never allowed. Maybe Glenn Beck longs to sort of skip when he goes jogging, instead of just regular jogging. But he can't, and what comes out is all this weird, puffy-faced anger instead. And maybe Sarah Palin, in her more honest moments, quietly wishes she could just step up to her next podium and cry, and say, it's all happening so fast. I would just like to cry here for a few minutes. And then maybe hug a chimp, which is unrelated, but I just want to do it.